Hi guys, today I received Ed of the YouTube channel What the Funk. Welcome Ed.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
Hey, so I've watched a lot of your videos on What the Funk and yeah, and I always love like how they are really super well made. So yeah, I mean, thanks for like your the quality of everything you do. Really love it. And so yeah, I have a couple of questions for you. So how did you get into blockchain and decided to start your YouTube channel?
So to begin with, I got into blockchain basically like everyone does, and that's trading. So maybe back in 2015, I started buying some Bitcoin, some Litecoin, with the hopes of making some money on it. And then I didn't really start getting into it until maybe 2017, when everybody knows crypto just kind of took off. And I kind of got into that by accident. I got into it just reading a few articles on Ethereum and realized you could actually write code that lives on the blockchain, which was kind of interesting to me. So I just kind of started to teach myself that because I had a feeling it was going to be something to some kind of skill to have in the future. It just seemed right.
Also, I think we actually got into it exactly at the same time because I started in 2016, 2017. And, and so you said like before you were trading and then you started to be more interested in the technology. So did you start to focus right away on Ethereum or before you tried on blockchain?
It was right away on Ethereum because it was the first one that I could could easily get my hands on, as far as I could tell. I didn't. I mean, I knew you could do some programmatic stuff with Bitcoin, but I mean, there was not really any good documentation out there on how to do it. And I don't know. I just stumbled upon the documentation for Solidity and writing smart contracts, and the whole idea of smart contracts just, I mean, just was just easier to grasp for me than anything else at the time.
Yeah, I totally understand. Like when I first got started in blockchain, at first I also tried to do some stuff with other blockchain like Bitcoin or Monero. But I realized a lot of the things that people were doing, they were modifying existing blockchains. So people that were taking the code of Bitcoin and modifying it, or Monero, which is even more complicated. But the problem of that is this blockchain, they are written in C++.
Oh yeah,
And a guy like me who is a web developer, like just forget about it.
right.
I mean, I think if you want to develop an expertise in C++, it's going to take you like 10 years.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. C++. I mean, I took a C++ class maybe in high school, and I remember not really enjoying it. But basically, because it just forces you to I don't know, worry about way too much with your application rather than getting down to the business logic, in my opinion. So like web development, basically you have an idea for something, you kind of write it out. All the memory management and the other stuff is just
yeah,
kind of taken care of. C++ is
yeah,
like you want to tighten every little nut and bolt and screw part of your application. It's
yeah. And
crazy.
also, as web developers, I don't think we are trying to think in terms of multi-threaded programs.
Yeah.
Like the fact that there are different unit of executions. And so that's something you have in every blockchain. Like you have like maybe one thread that manages the storage of the blockchain, one thread the consensus algorithm, and they all have to cooperate and they use some primitives that we're really not used to. So yeah, I mean that was interesting to open the box and try to see what's in it. But really professionally, I couldn't really see what I could do with it. So then, like you, I found Ethereum, and then I found, hey, actually, this is much easier to apply my skill as a blockchain developer, as a web developer. But at the beginning, I don't know if you remember, but the docs for Solidity and Ethereum were really not that great. So that was exciting, but
Right.
uh, so not super easy. So that's actually one of the reasons I started my channel. Maybe that also influenced you to start your own to teach yourself and other people. I don't know.
Uh, that was part of it. Part of it was at the time I was working remote for a an agency out of Chicago doing web development. PHP, Magento, JavaScript type stuff. And I just was looking for just an interesting thing to do on the side, maybe start a side business. And I was just looking into YouTube, and I just wanted to start making some tutorials just to kind of see where it would go. And for some reason, I just went with the blockchain tutorials, as that's what I was actually learning at the time. So it seemed like a perfect match, kind of regurgitate what I had just learned and try and teach somebody else to kind of solidify it in my mind. And because I did that in 2017, it just kind of took off. Like people were also interested in the same topic, so it just encouraged me to keep my channel and keep making videos.
But I think we have a very similar professional experience about this because I also used to be a PHP and a WordPress developer at the beginning of my career. And quickly I started to feel bored by it. And also I could see that professional opportunities as a PHP developer are more limited. You can, some PHP developer can make money and can work on interesting project, but I think for the vast majority of them, it's not the case, and you tend to have bad clients who don't pay you that well. But I know for Magento, this is different because Magento, you work with a large corporation, so this is like a niche in PHP.
Yeah, so yeah, I feel like in PHP you either have to specialize in something like Magento, WordPress, Drupal, or
Mm.
Laravel, or just go and be like start your own business if you want to really succeed as a PHP developer. Otherwise, you're just kind of just gonna coast along and not really.
Yeah, yeah. I think PHP like naturally make you push you to be an entrepreneur. Like I remember thinking that WordPress for me was hell for developer, but that was a paradise for entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many the people that just make their living off of WordPress, and I'm finding now I've actually started writing a WordPress plugin that I haven't. I mean, I haven't worked with WordPress in many years, so I just started writing a WordPress plugin for a project I'm working on, and I just remembered how how much of a pain working with WordPress is and how much I hated it. But I mean, you can definitely make money with WordPress.
Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah. And so, and after you started to specialize more in back-end development.
I think I've always been more back-end development, just because of working with PHP. The front end stuff was just kind of secondary. Um, I I mean I when I first started doing web development, of course, you start learning HTML, JavaScript, so you know how to work with the front end. I'm not really a like a designer, so when it comes to front end development, I just rely on pre-made components and frameworks, and that stuff makes everything look nice and sexy for me, and the back end stuff is just more interesting to me.
Yeah, I understand. Like there are many developers that start more with the front end, and after they move to the back end. This is quite a typical path. And so you started to focus on a specific language for the back end.
Uh, well, originally it was PHP, and then I started learning some Node stuff, and then I got into Go, which was very interesting to me. It was very C like in its syntax, but much like way trimmed down. And what I liked about it is that you could write something and basically compile it to like a single binary and just like run it almost anywhere. Especially, well, it can compile down to most architectures, Mac, PC, Linux. And if you're familiar with Docker, you can actually just create like a really small Docker image and just like throw your app anywhere you want to run your app. It just works. And I also got interested in its concurrency, which they treat like its own like um, first class citizen. Is like basically you want to something to run concurrently, like at the same time. It's just a simple one line of code essentially, and you've got something
Yeah.
running side by side with whatever else you have going. So I just found Go really interesting, and it was pretty easy to pick up, and I just kind of started teaching myself that.
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Like I really saw the meteoric rise of Go, and unfortunately I didn't jump on that, but because
It's not too
I
late. It's not too late.
not too late. Oh, and there isn't so Go 2.0 that will be released soon, or something like this. No,
I'm not totally sure, but I think yeah, that's correct.
because when Go started to be popular, I that's the moment I started to be in to learn Rust.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and and then I I wasn't sure if I should also learn Go because it seems like Rust was a how do you say had a stronger um, how do you say had a stronger use case for backend stuff, but it seems like Go is actually very specialized only for servers. It's what like most people use it for.
Yeah. So one of the big things it's used for is, I guess, microservice architecture.
Mm,
So you just write one really small program to do one very specific thing really fast and really efficiently, and then just move on to the next task of your web app, and basically just build your entire app infrastructure with these little microservices written in Go. And
yeah.
I mean, if you do it right, it's a very efficient way to build something complex. If you do it wrong, it's a nightmarish way to do something complex. But yeah,
And, and, and and I heard also like as a Node.js developer, it's easier to pick up Go than to pick up Rust.
uh, I've never actually really looked at Rust too much, but I mean, I
Yeah,
could see that. Um,
yeah. No, Rust is what it's I think easier than C++, but still you have to think a lot about the types. Like in comparison, when you use a npm package, you just look at the doc quickly, you just copy paste some snippet, and boom, it works.
right.
Uh, with Rust, no. You gotta yeah really develop a deep understanding of the types of the package you're using.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's really not a plug and play. And so you got into Go, and then you try to do some blockchain thing in Go.
Yeah, so when I started learning blockchain development with Ethereum specifically, everything I saw up to that point was basically Web3 JavaScript. Um, and there were like a few articles floating around about how to interact with Go. And I mean, I loved working with Go, and I was very interested in the language at the time. So I was wondering, why aren't there more people doing blockchain development with Go? Especially since the one of the most popular nodes to run an Ethereum, or clients to run an Ethereum node, is written in Go. Why aren't more people using Go? And so I started researching that, and um, what I found was really interesting is that the people who wrote Geth, the Go Ethereum client, basically wrote it in such a way that the source code is just um, reusable. So you can just import the source code from the Geth client into your Go project and just use any individual component from that as part of your overall app. So all of the types, like the address type, the contract type, all these ways they use to talk to the Ethereum network, you can just pull that into your app and it's already rewritten. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And you get
Cool,
the power and speed of Go. So
cool. So have you built some sort of like small Ethereum client that can interface with the network and do some stuff, or how does it work?
so I'm basically doing the same thing that you would do in Web3. I'm just using Go as the interface. Um, so I've built uh, I mean, like 2 years ago, I worked with a project. It was basically an online casino. We had our own ERC20 token and stuff to gamble with. and the whole back end was basically um, listening, basically connecting to the network in a specific token smart contract, listening for deposits to a certain address, and then relaying that to a uh, whatever the casino software, and then also for withdrawals, basically listening for withdrawal requests from the casino software, and then sending that, and that's all running with like little. I think I had like two or three microservices running, and just basically doing some things concurrently. And I mean, it worked. It's probably not my best work because it was the first time I'd ever done something like this, but I mean, it worked surprisingly well.
Wow, sounds really cool. And so when you do this, does it mean that you take the Go implementation and you add some code to it, you modify it, and then you have to run a node, or you just take some package and you do something totally separated from the code base of Guess, and then it connects to a remote node to connect to the blockchain.
So basically, the way Go applications, if you're done the right way, they're broken up into different packages to kind of logically split up the code of your project. So you can take those packages from another project and just import them directly into your project. So, for example, there's a eth client package in the Go Ethereum
Mhm.
source. So all you have to do is basically import the eth client package, instantiate your own eth client, and connect to whatever node you want, like Infura, for example. So
Wow, so well, it seems really very modular.
yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So actually, most people when they think of decentralized application, um, they think of the front end because usually dApp are very front end heavy, and the backend is often non-existent. But you can still do some backend development connected to blockchain, and so that's basically what you do with your with Go.
right. So it's definitely not decentralized in the sense that if the Go server goes down, basically the app goes down. But I mean, there's certain apps you don't really need the total decentralization part. You basically just want care about the security and the consensus of the Ethereum network, and then you just want everything else to run like a normal decentralized application.
And even I think in some cases, a backend part in your dApp can also make things easier for example, for listening to events.
Yeah, so I mean, you can listen to events on your front end, but if you close your browser, you're going to miss some events. So, like caching things on the back end helps with the user experience on the front end. If they have a way to get information about the state of the network without having to clog up the network with requests, that's better for the user.
Yeah. That really makes sense. And like listening to events is always a big pain for Ethereum dApp developer. And I believe that you've done also quite some work on with the Loom network.
Yeah, so I got into Loom specifically because they they allowed you to download their test client, so you could basically create your own blockchain on your own machine, and they allowed for um, smart contracts written in Go. Surprisingly enough, it's basically just like um, it wasn't like a smart contract running on the EVM. It was just like a plugin to the Loom binary or a plugin to the node that you're running that is able to interact like a smart contract. They don't do that anymore. Um, I don't think it's available anymore, and they've kind of moved away from that. But that's how I got into them initially. Um,
Oh, cool.
so the actual Loom coin token implementation on their main network is as far as I understand it, is a Go um, a Go smart contracts. So is their implementation of ETH on their main network.
So did they take the implementation of Go of Ethereum and modify it for their own purpose?
So they have an EVM as part of their network, but
Hmm.
on next to the EVM, they have a way to sideload plugins or modules to to so you can interact with them as contracts as well.
Hmm. So, so what's the state of the Loom network now? Because I guess it must have changed a lot since like it started like 1 year or 2 year ago.
So right now so basically what Loom network is a layer two EVM compatible sidechain. So it's just Ethereum, and their consensus is distributed proof of stake. So basically, you have a bunch of validators, and then the participants of the network basically stake their own tokens with their individual validators to essentially vote for who's validate. And I mean, it runs faster than the mainnet Ethereum network because it's just proof of stake. It's not proof of work. Um, and it's just a way to have uh, quicker a quicker user experience for your dApps. So the way they do this is they have a transfer gateway on the Ethereum mainnet to transfer any sort of assets. So any ERC20 tokens, Ethereum, um, any NFT tokens, and basically transfer them onto the layer two chain, and you can have your dApp running on the layer two chain, doing much quicker transactions without any waiting. And then when the user is done interacting with your app, they're able to transfer them back to the mainnet, back to their wallet. And they do this either they have like the transfer gateway has a one-to-one mapping, so you have your Ethereum address and your Loom address. So you map those two addresses so they become one. So anytime you deposit to this transfer gateway, it knows where to transfer it on the Loom network. And they also do cross-chain signing. So if you want to sign any transactions on the Loom network, you can just sign it with your Ethereum wallet that's mapped to that address on the Loom network.
Wow, like I didn't know it was so advanced. And so for people who are Ethereum dApp developer, how difficult it is to integrate with the Loom network?
It's actually not that difficult at all. It's you use all the same tools that you would use to develop um, smart contracts on Ethereum. You would just be deploying them to the Loom network, and then you've just got to basically keep in the back of your mind that uh, users are going to be transferring assets back and forth from one chain to another, and you have to um, also keep in mind that there are two different addresses on two different networks, and that they have to be mapped somehow.
So do they have a sort of equivalent of Ganache for local development?
So you can just use Ganache, and you can actually download the Loom local binary to basically run a Loom node on your machine. So you can run a Loom test node and then connect to it. Uh, well, you could actually use Ganache to test your smart contracts, or you could also use the Loom binary as a test network to test your smart contracts. So either one will work. But if you want to get closer to the state of how your app is going to work, you're going to want to use the Loom binary.
Wow, sounds pretty cool. Like I mean that means it's not too difficult to work on the Loom network, and so they are really focused on games, right?
They've actually pivoted a lot since they came out. They started with a focus on games, and now they're basically wanting to be an all-purpose layer two solution. So games, dApps, and they're also kind of because DeFi is big now. They seem like they're starting to promote DeFi applications. So there's I think one of the main applications on there right now is called Alice. And so they do
Mhm.
kind of the same thing as something like Compound or Fulcrum, but it runs on the Loom network. So you don't have any um, transaction fees or anything like that. You're just interacting with it like you would on the mainnet. And then I guess once you've collected your interest or borrowed whatever, you can transfer them onto the mainnet and do what you want with them
Wow, like you're so knowledgeable on Loom. Like I had no idea about all these things.
there.
And is there any really cool project you're following now on Ethereum blockchain?
I mean, I've been looking into the DeFi stuff, dabbling a little bit. I haven't dipped my foot totally in the water because I don't. I mean, I trust it, but I don't trust it. If that makes any sense. And then I'm really interested in this whole concept of flash loans. I'm sure you've heard about it on Twitter. Everybody's talking about the flash loan exploit
Yeah,
over the last week. So I'm kind
yeah,
of want to get my hands on that and kind of understand how all that works.
yeah. Flash are really crazy. Also a bit dangerous. But yeah, like there is so much experimentation going on DeFi currently. Like yeah, this is crazy. Yeah, I mean, DeFi is right now on Ethereum. This is the shit. So yeah,
Yeah.
we gotta get into it. And yeah, so if you guys are interested in backend blockchain development with Go or integration with the Loom network, then check out the YouTube channel of Ed. What the Func? I'll put the link in the description. Yeah, anything else you want to add, Ed?
No, it was a pleasure talking
Yeah.
with you.
Well, thank you for coming here, and I'll see you soon on your channel. What the Func?
All right, thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.